when we have essentially half pipes laid in drain rock. So it's like a big leach field, like you can put.
Have you any idea what that cost?
It wasn't cheap.
Probably more than the building itself.
Oh, no.
No, I doubt that.
No.
A leach line.
It's, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that expensive.
When I say
But-
building itself, let's say the parking lot itself.
No, it's really not that bad. You know,
I'd like
you'd
to
be
know.
talking about, I don't know, several tens of thousands of dollars for that particular system, which, as much as they put out for that whole facility, is beans. The important thing is to plan for it. You don't want to have this come as a surprise later on after you've laid things out.
Is this, another question, please. Is this something that the EPA, I shouldn't use the word dreamed up, but thought was a great idea, so it's going to be applied from the top down without really understanding at the down part, the effect it's going to have on people? Because the whole thing depends upon whether you have 5 inches of rain a year or 25 inches of rain a year. And any area that has, our average here is, 15 to 20, except for the extremes. But that's average. On any given year, it can be 10 inches of rain, and then on an unusual year, it could be 30 inches of rain. And whatever you put in is simply, on average, it might work, but generally, it's not going to work.
Well, there is a design that we do to make sure that it does work all the time. But yeah.
For worst case or best case or what?
Typically, what we, I'm sorry, Tom.
No, keep going.
Typically, what we would do is we would find out what the minimum requirements are for the project, which is from this permit, because that will give you your least expensive system. And we will generate a certain number of cubic feet of water that we need to store. Okay? And we can store that in these planter areas if we've got little depressions. We'll send it to these little planter areas and it will percolate within 2 days. You'd never know that it's a stormwater facility.
Would that be on, would you take rainfall averages then and use those?
No, they're designed storms. So if it was a small development like a single-family residence, it wouldn't even be the 2-year average. So it would be, what is it, 0.6 inches, which is really not a lot of rain.
Okay.
For larger projects, you design for larger storms.
How does this affect the packer and growers and shippers, and what's been their reaction to it up to now? How would this affect them?
I don't really know.
You know?
Yeah. One of the commercial projects we had was actually for a packing and shipping facility.
Yeah.
And it caught them off guard because they didn't know. Because, again, they were only involved with an architectural firm that wasn't up to speed, which is why I keep reiterating, go talk to the county or talk to a civil engineer, because it's easy to incorporate up front, it's really hard to incorporate after you've bought the land with a square footage.
And you start messing with farmers, and you open up a whole new can of worms. That's what it seems.
That leads another question.
Yes.
What strategies have you in your organization put in place to inform all of the private sector, like the architectural firms and the engineering firms and the public at large?
Yeah, that's what we're in the process of doing now, and thank you again for inviting me here today to do this. Next week, I know that Michael Laxer is an architect, will be presenting the same thing in front of the Monterey Bay AIA chapter meeting, so that we can get word out to the people who really need it. Like Dan was saying,
Sure.
we want it to be as smooth as possible, and there's going to be glitches, I'm sure.
Because it sounds to me what I'm hearing is that the planning department is the one that's going to mandate and incorporate into the permit process the fulfilling these requirements for new construction.
Yeah. And it's a mandate from the regional water board. I have to keep saying that because
The regional, those people.
If the regional water board, they are mandating it, it will be the planning department of whichever city you're working in, who has to enforce.
Yeah, you'll simply apply for permit, so they condition the permit.
Yeah, and it'll be just like another, a checklist that somebody's gotta go through before the checklist for bigger projects.
Now, Michael Waxer talked about where the water eventually, or at least in some systems, maybe the city has to do this, where the water has to have higher standards, the runoff water has to have higher standards than drinking water. Can you explain that?
Has nothing to do with this program. The beginning one over here, that's an ocean program requirement.
Now, that's the cities that are where drain water goes, or storm water goes right directly into the ocean. That has to be collected and then purified before it's dumped back into the ocean?
Yes, we're in the process of implementing, that was the ASBS, the Areas of Special Biological Significance, and they're only for very specific areas along the coastline. Here locally, there's one that essentially covers Pacific Grove and Monterey Bay. Like once you get around the corner by Asilomar and all that, it's not an area of special biological significance. And then also Carmel Bay is one, which is a concern to the county of Monterey. Point Lobos has one around it to try and protect the water there, and Julia Pfeiffer Burns has another one, and then there's one way down south at Salmon Creek Coast.
So storm water can go in from here into the river, and that's not a problem.
Correct.
But how do you know if that someday, that special region will be extended even more further inland, where the water here has to be collected to being greater than the qualities for drinking water? I mean, is that a possibility? I call it kind of government creep, that once you start in one area, it moves on to another area.
Yeah, I guess personally, I could see that happening. When it happens, I don't know. How it'll happen, I don't know. There's been no discussion of that to this point. Maybe 30 years from now, 50 years from now, that could happen. It's out of my...
For example, if it did happen, and it's similar to these special regions, if it did happen, what would they have to do? The storm drain water would have to go to a holding tank?
Well,
be osmosis or something, or filtered before it goes into the river?
Yeah, there's a lot to figure out on that still.
Well, I mean, so they haven't figured it out yet for the special area in the city of Monterey and Carmel?
No. We're in the process of just beginning our discussions. That program was approved in March, on March 20th, by the state board up in Sacramento. And so now we have 18 months to come up with a plan. We've been in discussion with the state board staff, the regional board staff, on how we're actually going to do that. So there's been a lot of discussion about how is it possible to do this.
I mean, the reason I asked that question is I do a lot of research, and what I've studied, what I've seen is that government will do some project in a very small little area, in a very small scope, and then it just keeps expanding, and then eventually get to a point is, how did they ever get here?